Alrighty, so we already went through a few weeks already about different topics in the world, and now we're going to talk about people, right? About what we are here to do and how different people from around the world have different takes on that. So, this week, we're going to boil it down to race. And that is a very simplistic view of things, to look at someone's ethnicity and say, hey, you're like this. But it is helpful to break it down that way because you can talk about a group of people much easier than an individual you don't know. And it's also because, roughly speaking, these ethnicities come out because they are essentially an extended family. People who've been living with each other for millennia, and they gain some similar characteristics, some similar ways of thinking. And so when you compare a European to an African to someone in China, it's all different. They all act differently. And so, the focus of this week, and I always try to have a theme throughout the week as we talk about different subtopics. The theme here is that there are four main lessons that we as human beings have to learn to be good people, to be productive people, to be, healthy and prosperous. And those four lessons are individuality, community, logic, and faith. And oftentimes, people think of these four lessons as two things that have a spectrum on them. That you either have individuality or you have a community-minded sense, and you go on this spectrum between being an individual and being part of a community, and you figure out where you land. Or there's logical people, and there's people who work on faith, and there's some people who fall in the middle. This is not the right way to think about it, because just because the methodology and the purpose of each of these four things is different does not mean that you have to be one or the other, and it's impossible to be both. It is very possible to be both. You can be very much an individual with your own goals and your own mind and your own opinions, and still be part of a community and have that make sense. And in the same way, you can be very logical and still take things on faith, even when there isn't any evidence. These are not contradictory ideas. Rather, they are distinct ideas. They are not the same. And so when you try to treat logic using faith, you're going to have a bad time. And when you try to think of faith using logic, you're going to have a bad time. When you think of a community as a bunch of individuals, you're going to have a bad time. And when you think an individual as part of a community, like a cog in the machine, you're going to have a bad time. These are completely separate ideas, even though they seem like they might be related, like they should be related. And this is why the many different races of the world and how they interact with these core ideas of what makes us human, of what makes us prosper, of what makes us feel good, be happy, is that the different races of the world, the different areas of the world and different cultures and all this stuff, they are handling learning these lessons in different ways. And because of that, they might have one, and they might gain another. And then throughout the centuries, they may even gain a third to a certain degree. But I don't believe yet that anywhere on Earth is there a group of people that have all four. And I don't think that's by accident. I think it's more like, in order to really get all four, in order to have all four and really learn and understand them implicitly, you need some of everyone. That you can't just have one type of person and be whole. That you need different people from all over the world bringing these lessons together, so that way we together can be more than we are apart. And in some ways, that's what America is all about. It's about bringing people from all over the world, learning from each other, growing with each other, and becoming one people. One people that take in all of these different lessons from all over the world and put them together. And so it's important as we go through this week to understand that we're not talking about one race is better than the other, because that is very much a simplistic view of things. There's this concept of racial supremacy, right? That one race is better than another. Like, oh, well, white people are the best in the world because, well, they got the most stuff, right? Well, if you're optimizing for stuff, yeah, I guess that would make you win, huh? But not everyone's optimizing for stuff. Some people care about more than that. And white people aren't happier just because they have more stuff. So, it's like that joke. Not much of a joke, but it's reasonably funny. This white American guy goes down to Mexico, and he's out by the beach, and he meets a guy from Mexico, and the guy from Mexico is like, "Oh yeah, I'm having a good time here." And then the American's like, "Oh, hey, what do you do all day?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I kind of I take out my boat, catch a few fish, throw them back, and then I cook them up. That's our food for the day, and then and then I just relax and hang out with the kids and stuff." And the American's like, "Oh, well, what you could do is you could sell those fish, and then once you sell those fish, you can buy another boat and have employees run that boat. And then you can have many more boats, and then you would have so many more fish caught each day. And then with all those fish you catch each day and you sell, you would have so much income." And then the guy from Mexico is like, "Oh, really? Okay. Well, what would I do with all of that?" And he's like, "Well, that's the thing, is you could keep scaling up and up and up." And it's like, "Yeah, but what's the end goal on there?" And the American's like, "Oh, well, this is the best part. Once you have this fishing empire, then you know what you can do? You can retire." And then he's like, "Oh, okay. What would that look like?" And he's like, "Well, you can just relax all day, catch a few fish, throw them back, maybe have them for dinner. Like, real easy, simple life." And the Mexican guy's like, "Hey, that's what I do now." And yeah, I'm probably not telling it in the most funny way, but you get the point. Is that if you're optimizing for a retirement lifestyle, maybe having a retirement lifestyle that, is something you can do today, and you don't have to work yourself to death today. Well, maybe that's the point. Maybe that's something desirable. And that's something in America that people are just starting to conceive of. And you have all these people with tiny homes saying, I don't need a giant house. I can have this size house, and that's enough. And then I'm done. I have it. I have my house. I don't have to pay a mortgage all the time. And then you have people who travel to different parts of the world, and they say, well, if I make American dollars and pays for stuff in these dollars, then I basically have to do like nothing, like no work at all. And this idea is just coming to America now, that you don't have to be the most productive person on the face of the planet to have a good life, to have a fulfilling life. And it's obvious to these other places, and that's how we even learned it in the first place, because America doesn't think like that. We had to see it somewhere else first. And so when that Mexican person is laying down on the beach, relaxing, and not building that fishing empire he could build, he's not a defective person. He's not doing it wrong. He's doing it different. And there is a time and place to be hyper-productive. Like, we wouldn't have nearly as many things as we have unless people were hyper-productive. But the idea that everyone has to be that way, that everyone has to be one way, there's one correct way to be, and there's not different aspects of what they're doing and what we're doing and what this guy's doing and what that guy's doing. There's different stuff coming from everyone. And we can learn from each other and grow together. And that's a good thing. And so this idea that one race is better than the rest is just wrong. One race has learned one lesson better than others, sure. And we're going to go through this week to talk about each race and what lessons they've learned, how they learned them, why they learned them, and why it makes sense that they have that about them. Where all these ideas come from, and this grand narrative of the whole world, and how every single human being fits into a single world, and how this world is coming together, and how all the different people from all around the world are coming together, and how we need each other to improve ourselves, to grow, and be more than we were yesterday. And that's something that doesn't really get talked about. And I think a good chunk of the reason why is because when you talk about people in terms of race, in terms of what part of the world their ancestors grew up in, it's very easy to say, well, that's racism. Because it is. Whenever you say Chinese people are good at math, that's racist. Of course. It's relatively positive racism, right? Yeah, sure. But it still negatively affects them in general. And so whenever you talk about a group of people, and you say this group of people is like this, first of all, that's the average. That's not descriptive of everyone who's like that, who's from that area. And second of all, so what? They're people, and they can change like that within a generation. And we've seen this time and time again as immigrants come to America. Within 1 or 2 generations, indistinguishable. This melting pot that we have, which people say, oh, it doesn't really work. Well, it kind of does. Maybe it isn't working as well today as it did in the past, but I think a lot of it is this fear that someone's from a different culture and they don't change on a dime. They grew up in a different culture and they don't instantly magically become 100% American. Well, why would they? How could they? But with their kids and then their kids' kids, time after time, They do assimilate. Whether the original group coming into America wanted them to or not, they eventually do assimilate. And what happens is, the America culture grows by learning what makes them unique, what makes them different. And then, when their kids get assimilated into American culture, they're not just selling out their ancestors to get something new. They're building on what their ancestors did in a new and interesting way. That's what America is all about. Is that everyone has a different history, a different past. And we bring all of that together to make a new and better whole. And this is not just something that Americans do, this is something that Christians do as well. There are so many ways in which different cultures has added to Christianity, has made it grow and improve, and had our understanding of God be challenged and pushed further. And that happens time and time again. This is why you have what are they called? Poinsettias. That's not something that, the Hebrews came up with. The reason we have poinsettias is because there was a story, I think it was a Christmas story, about how this girl brought forward a gift to God, and she's like, I want to bring some flowers, but I can't see any. It's wintertime, right? So she just grabs a plant, and when she brings it into the light, it's red and beautiful. And it shows that, maybe we aren't what we seem. Maybe there's more to us, more beauty inside us than we give ourselves credit for. That maybe even though it doesn't have flowers, it can still be beautiful. And that's something that has been added. And it's not original to Christianity. It's not something that Christianity invented. But as Christianity included more and more people, we grew together. We improved together. We grow together. And this is the same thing. We are one world with one people. We just have a lot of subgroups. A lot of different subgroups where some people learned one lesson and others learned a different one. And when we bring those lessons together, then we are more than we were apart. And that's what we're going to be talking about this week. And so, hopefully, you can watch this and not think I'm a horrible racist person for boiling down people this way. But it is a melting pot after all. So some boiling is required. And yeah, hopefully you have fun. Hopefully you have a good time. And hopefully you're not offended too much. We'll get into it.